Hello, welcome to the show. I'm Jacquelene. You're on A1R Psychic Radio and Moonstruck TV. Oh, there you go. So today I was going to talk about deities in readings, and so gods and goddesses and other types of beings. And before I started, I actually went, what do you reckon Palais will turn up? And I actually literally just finished shuffling cards, and sure enough, oof, there she is, right next to Baba Yaga, of course. I mean, those two things don't really go together, but with me, they can turn up anywhere. I actually have had deities turn up in a reading, and so it can be a little bit of music, to say the very least, when that sort of symbology comes through. And some people talk about like archangels turning up in readings, and I get animal guides as well, and you know, different kind of energies and elements and all this sort of thing. But it's always fun when fun. It's I don't know, and it's also kind of interesting and funny in the sense of what these deities will do and how cryptic that can be. So, you know, I've had situations where a lady actually came in for her reading, and I looked at her as she was at the front door, and I went, "Whoa!" Like, you know, I was trying to be very polite, but I was like, "Whoa, look at this!" And I was actually seeing the monkey over her face, and I'm like, it's going to be interesting. And so she walked in, she sat down, and next thing I saw Hanuman behind her, which is the Indian monkey god. And he's standing there with a great big stick. And I said, what are you doing? Like, she thinks we're having a conversation, but I'm having a conversation with her, but I'm also having a conversation with him. And I said, look, dude, what are you doing? Like, great, you're here, but, you know. He says, oh, look, she's about to ask you about the married guy. And I went, okay. and he said, and every time she asks about the married guy or thinks about him too much, actually knocked her over the head a bit. And I went, it seems a bit extreme. And he goes, well, I was hoping you might get the point across to her. And I went, you know, usually people get butterflies and feathers and lovely, you know, messages of synchronicity, but you're bringing a big stick. Okay, fine. He said, it's just that she's obsessing about him and he's never going to leave the wife for her. And really, you know, this is just not, I mean, this is beneath her. She's got better values than this. And I went, okay. So sure enough, next thing she goes, and I really want to know about, and then, oof. And I just looked at her and I said, how's your head? You know, like, yeah. And she goes, oh, it actually hurts all of a sudden. I went, I said, you've been getting headaches often lately, haven't you? And she goes, yeah, actually. She goes, why do you think that is? And I said, well, well, there's a good reason for that. Have you thought about the fact that you just asked me about this guy? She goes, yeah. I said, and you're going to try and tell me he's not married, aren't you? She goes, how do you, and I went, where are we again and what are we doing today? She goes, oh, yeah, you're a psychic. And I went, hang on, sweetie. And she goes, well, yes. And I goes, do you notice that every time you think about him intently or you talk about him intently or you ask questions about him, or I said, I'm about the sixth reader you've had about him, aren't you? And she goes, how do you? I said, oh. I said, okay. I said, you believe in Hanuman? And she goes, oh, yes, I pray to him all the time. And I went, oh, that explains a few things. She goes, why? I said, well, you know how Hanuman carries around a big stick? She goes, yeah. And she goes, I said, he just kind of hits you on the head a bit because he's trying to get you to notice. And feathers, maybe that was being tried at some point, but that wasn't effective, wasn't getting through. So I said, that's what's happened. And so, you know, she decided that maybe going after this married guy wasn't working, and that she didn't want to get hit on the head anymore. And so she decided against that. And so it's kind of one of the harshest stories, I have to say, about a deity. Normally beings can't, you know, physically, you know, make you feel things normally. You know, there must have been some part of her conscience that sort of went, I think I'm doing the wrong thing here for me and for this guy and, the whole situation. And I don't like to place judgment calls on people doing different things in their life, all these sorts of things, because live and let live, and people have their lessons, and there can be a lot of karma behind that we don't all know about. Fundamentally, I think that it's better to leave someone rather than be with someone and not be with them. But, in her situation, that's where she was at. And she was a single person being led on by this dude, bro. Which brings me to talking about goddesses and gods and deities today and how they come up in readings, and how I was shuffling cards before, and I was like, beforehand, I was like, reckon Pele is going to turn up. So I might talk to her about her today. So Pele is the volcano goddess, the Hawaiian volcano goddess, and she travels with a white cloud, which is actually a white fox. And she's all about awakening your rage and bringing it all out. And I don't know if you noticed the energy on the weekend, but there's been quite a lot of upheaval. In a couple of years of big upheaval, we have more upheaval. And we certainly look at the last week in the Middle East, and we look at all around the world and different things going on there. And it's been quite a heavy energy to deal with, particularly for women. And for women's leadership and the future of women's rights and freedoms and all these sorts of things. And so that's been quite huge. And Pele recognises that sort of awakening and that rush of energy, but there's also kind of having to deal with rage here a bit, to say the very least. And the card after that is actually Baba Yaga, which Vasilisa was sent out into the forest to find Baba Yaga and find fire. And she actually followed her intuition when reaching Baba Yaga and was asked the trick questions, but she trusted her intuition as to how to answer that. And that's how she got out of there safely, because frankly, people didn't come back from Baba Yaga. And sometimes in facing our biggest fears, we follow our instincts, intuition, as well as our logic, and then we can come through that. And of course, we then have the story of Vasilisa then carrying the fire back, and well, the rest is history. And good on Vasilisa, because there comes a point where you just have to clean everything up one way or the other. And there comes a point in oppressive situations where there's a break point where people have to rise up and, speak up, stand up, do their thing. And it can get very tiring for people to relentlessly be doing that. And this is where, we need to think of being good allies and all these sorts of things to people who might be around us and might not feel like they have a voice, for example, particularly intuitive people who might feel, they're picking things up accurately, but they're being gaslit, or, someone who's a person of colour who can't walk down the street at night, without that being a problem. And, if they need to go down there, well, can you walk down with them? All these different things we can do that might seem small but might make a difference. And I think the more that we can think about not just ourselves, and I'm calling this time we're in a time of learning to go beyond the I into the we. And in that, I'm meaning our group thinking and caring about not just our own individual freedoms, but the freedoms of other people around us, other people who might not be as fortunate as us, and how we can kind of help foster that freedom in them and around them. And, freedom was never really gained peacefully necessarily. We can sort of talk about how, people shouldn't protest, or people shouldn't argue, and people shouldn't this, and we shouldn't have divide and conquer, and we shouldn't be trying to fight each other. And it's like, well, if people are not being reasonable, at what point do we, find that middle ground? Sometimes people saying that you can't have this point of view because that's fighting, or that's, creating a division. The division might already be there. Just think outside the box on this, particularly as an intuitive person, when people are trying to convince you that, for example, vaccinations are causing a division. No. What's in a donut? Do you know what's in that before you eat it? I rest my case. Time to have to think about this on a very practical level. Listen to your instincts, but also listen to science. But look at how you can face the aggressions within yourself at this point in time using Pele. You can Google more about her. I'll be back next week talking about a lot of other things. In the meantime, I'm going to send you lots of love and light, and I will catch up with you next week. I'll also be on Facebook on my live page. My cat's joining me. Hello, shaved cat. I'm going to be back on with that next week, and that will be Australian Eastern Time, 8 p.m. next Friday on my Facebook page, Jacquelene Closemore Live, so you can actually catch me there. If you're looking for a private reading, you can actually find me on Facebook on Jacquelene Closemore or on my website. In the meantime, I'm going to say goodbye for now. Lots of love to you all. Bye-bye.